In this short film, you'll hear the voices and thoughts of Eddie, Simon, Sean and Penny. Between us, we've clocked up over 100 years as playworkers, mostly on adventure playgrounds. This work is a matter of urgency. We can never know what the impact of playhoods will have throughout the life of a human being, but we do know that the lack of it is not simply a matter of pleasant, fun times skipped over, but a lifelong negative deficit. Through play, we become human. We want to give you the chance to hear stories from 4 Playwork lives. Trust us, we're telling you stories.
Helo, croeso, welcome. Dyma'r maes chwarae antur eventer yng Nghymru. This is an adventure playground called The Venture in Wales. We have 4 adventure playgrounds across the country, and we're fortunate enough to have 3 of those 4 here in Wrexham in the northeast. So what is an adventure playground? Well, there are some people who are far better qualified, in my opinion, to answer that question for you. But before I try to answer that question, let's ask some experts what the venture is.
It's magic.
Magic.
It can teleport anywhere.
I see. So you can come here and go anywhere you want because you're on the venture.
The venture is a ginormous playground made out of wood, where you can go and play, and they do take Article 31 where everybody has the right to relax and play.
It's like where you can come play and build and fun activities, climb trees, go on a zip line.
It's a safe place for kids to come play, have like a good time where parents they don't have to come as long as an adult watching them. The kids can go around, play and stuff like that.
Place where you get fun. It's a fun area, a play area, and what else did I say a minute ago?
Fun.
Like a fun place.
Now that the experts have told you what the venture is, I'm going to try and explain what an adventure playground is, to me. An adventure playground is unique in the sense that it is one of the only places in the world where children and young people have parity with the adults that share the space with them. What they do here, the reasons they do it, and how they do it are their choice. Our job is to get out of the way. So using the Playwork principles, where their play is intrinsically motivated and personally directed, we are only to get involved if we are invited, if what we do extends the children's play, or that they're about to do something that's a little bit too risky. That's the only time we should get involved. Nowhere else in their life, be it at home, school, do they share that position of authority. If you're a doctor, you have the agenda of the child's health. If you're a teacher or youth worker, you have the agenda of education, of imparting information. For Playworkers, we are here purely to enable them to access their right to play. That's my take on an adventure playground, but here to give their thoughts, my esteemed colleagues.
Probably the first thing that strikes you is the aroma. On reaching the gate, wood smoke and Indian spice, the first things to arrive at the senses. In other locations across the UK, it might be the scent of barrel coal, marinated chicken. In others still, coconut and coriander, or perhaps more traditionally, the smell of roasting beef and potatoes. Flavour in adventure playground may well, in part, be borne upon the wind. These olfactory delights often speak of the traditions that have delivered the playground to its present tense reality. In the case of Felix Road, my adventure playground, the roots of the space can be traced to strong Windrush generation influence from the early 1970s, and also the children of post-war Sikh and Punjabi migrants, along with working-class Bristolians. Early accounts of this community reveal streets that were literally full of children in desperate need of space that they could mould to their playful needs, and someone to help them shape that space accordingly. Here's an early account from Bev Douglas, The First Moments of the Playground in 1972. For me, having an adventure playground nearby meant that I could play freely in my own way, in my own time, with no rules or hierarchy that I had to adhere to. Everyone who played there contributed to the build and shaped the environment according to their own vision. Apart from the playworkers, adults remained absent from our play space, so for me it was special. I was very much a loner outdoors. I loved how the secure environment of the adventure playground made me feel, enjoying my own company, as it gave me a feeling of independence and a total sense of freedom. I could run, jump, crawl and skip around the apparatus together with other kids and be as feral as the next one. It was up to me who I gave permission to join me in my little world. Quite often, the genesis of an adventure playground is a pressing need to respond to the vulnerability of children in the area and a profound lack of support for their families. In the case of Bristol, post-war planning was also a significant factor and the impact that this was having upon children. The emergent culture of the adventure playground, while at times challenging and conflicting, is one of almost profound solidarity that is nurtured and created by the play process itself and the universal language inherent in playing. The culture grows around the space that is played upon and the individual and collective emotional memory that becomes associated with that space through the years and, ultimately, the generations. The venture is often the chief emotional referent for an area, offering up a fugue of memory and effect wherever the word is spoken in the presence of others that share an experience of the place. It isn't difficult to spot adults at Felix Road that played here as children. They will wander in at the gate in slow motion, moving as if they are in a different liminal reality to the others in the playground. While the children's reveries are happening in real time, these adults are experiencing two time zones simultaneously, the one that greets them in the now and another that presents the artifacts of 1995 or 1986 or 1973. When I greet them inside, they are barely with me. Fleeting contact is usurped by the need to point out the zip wire on the top of a garrison structure, now gone, or a ply-topped half-pipe, where he or she may have flipped on his or her BMX and broke their arm. From the physical artefacts, these returners often naturally move to the human environment. They tell me about Garth wrestling them on the crash mats, or Carol sat alongside them making a costume for the carnival in St. Paul's. Then often follows the wider memories of something shared, something unique, something validating, something inherent. This was Ventures. When they leave on a warm handshake, they tell me that they are glad it is still here. Any description we have for an adventure playground is incomplete without these emotional and relational experiences situated in time. The accretion of these experiences become the culture and the community of the playground. There's often a palpable experience upon encountering it. While acknowledging that I already had a reasonable radar for a good Addy when I first arrived at Felix Road, my first holiday play scheme there left me in absolutely no doubt about the cultural potency of the environment. It's in the bloody bricks, I would mutter, smiling to myself as I wandered around the fire, past the stage and past hordes of kids flying about all over the place. In building adventure playgrounds in the future, and God knows that we need more of them now for all sorts of reasons, we have to consider these qualities inherent in this that have persisted through time. They are human spaces, storied, imperfect, raucous. They are also motile and transitory, just as the stories that we imagine and tell through play are. Our human stories and the value they build up as they layer up and over each other should be foremost in our mind as we imagine an adventure playground.
I've come from the community action tradition of adventure play, which was rooted in communities taking physical space in the city for the purpose of children's play and then protecting it and holding it so that the children themselves could direct and produce the flowering of what that space meant and means to them in their play. It's the perfect example of co-created space. It wouldn't be possible to create it without the intervention of the adults who took the space and hold it. Neither would it be possible without the agency of the children themselves who inhabit it. In this little piece of film, what you can see is affordances provided by adults, both very temporary in the shape of the simple braced frame, which you can see children working on together, and the more semi-permanent structure which children have been manipulating, adding to and taking from for several years. Neither of those structures provide any direction as to what they're supposed to be. They're there to be added to, and the resources, which you can see plenty of, are around for the children to add to the affordances which their adults have provided. The environment in the city, as the city had grown up, was not conducive to childhood. And so that space needed to be taken to compensate for the failings of the city. And those failings are, for example, the fact that the streets and neighbourhoods have been mainly taken over by traffic, and that traffic is dangerous, that the city is made up mainly of concrete and metal and glass. And so natural environments which flow with the seasons and which are essentially mutable, those weren't available to children. And lastly, that most space has been taken up by agendas which don't consider childhood, because childhood has no economic nor political power, and so it's ignorable. Childhood is about discovery and manipulation of that around you which is mutable. It's that discovery and manipulation which gives children the information that they need to actually navigate that world. The city's fixed and the city's directive is designed in another's image, an adult image, to another's desires and to another's ends. And it tends, if you're not actually following those desires and those ends at this minute, to exclude you and to exclude the activity, whatever that activity is that you happen to be engaged in. The adventure playground can and should be seen as a laboratory of experience, a place where the experimentation which is contained in play can be enacted physically and emotionally and socially upon the world, where it can be tried out, where it can be discarded if needed, and where the experience of applying one's agency to a physical and social situation can be solidified and carried into other parts of life beyond childhood. In that sense, the adventure playground is an intervention into the city of unitary urbanism.
I used to run an adventure playground where children with different disabilities and needs played together with siblings and peers. We had a dedicated site, but no structures there at all. So we found loose parts for the children to play with: sand, water, cardboard boxes, rope, fabric, bunches of keys. Anything really. It was the best training we could have had, and a great playground too. Playwork Theory exquisitely describes the observant, reflective stewardship needed to support the complex simplicity of the process of play. It teaches us that wherever children play in the world, there'll be a collage of 16 different play types, endlessly layered, constantly interweaving. Play isn't about measurable outcomes, but it carries a legacy into each of our lives. It's the thing that makes us, us. Adventure playgrounds were never supposed to be the only places where this freely chosen playing could happen. Yet of late they feel a little like conservation spaces, the last outpost observatories for watching children in their natural habitat. This is so wrong. For millennia, the threads of play were spun throughout every moment, every place of childhood, and at every opportunity. Jane Jacobs saw it in her neighbourhood and knew that if traffic and commerce systems were allowed to dictate urban design processes, then this vibrant aspect of community would be lost. It was part of her vision of the death of the city. 20% or so of our London population are children. Yet a family trip into town is pretty much an exercise in survival. Children are put into little harnesses or strapped into buggies. They have no choice but to see urban life at crotch height. So what about city parks? Well, cut to dream scenarios of children laughing, rolling down hills, flopping into fresh grass or burying themselves in deep, crispy piles of leaves. No, I've only ever found one open green space that was not covered in dog fowl. And canine defecation trumps the playing child every time. Municipal playgrounds are catalogue-bought tangles of bent metal and plastic, sluggish slides, drowsy swings, gaudy rubberized ground, and a sad springy chicken. This junior gym equipment unyieldingly prescribes the movements of children with a watered-down, tamed version of locomotor play, the only one of the 16 play types solely concerned with physicality. They're not places for quiet, slow, witty, subtle nuances of play, for exploring a worm cast with a twig, watching light refracted through a spray of water, or seeing what shape the wind makes when it blows. But, hey, children don't know any different. They have never lived before. And anyway, what they're going to do about it? Municipal playgrounds are often as bleak as barrack squares and just as boring. Lady Ellen of Hertford, 1952. We have othered children to the point where these things have become the acceptable norm. Playworkers have honed the skills, knowledge and practice to support play pretty much anywhere. And we have a sense of urgency which is tetchy about waiting for the perfect jam tomorrow child-friendly city to be designed and built. Childhood is too brief a moment for a dangling, everlasting tomorrow. The architects of Assemble declined the invitation to make a state-of-the-art playground in a new snazzy development, proposing instead something quite new, quite old, and quite different. They suggested making play a part of everyday life, rewilding it. So playworkers with loose parts went to the parks, plazas and atriums, and into the food market, and wherever we were, families came along too. It was always free. Play must always be free. Adults relaxed and enjoyed watching their children playing together. They remembered how glorious and vital play is, and became ferocious advocates, adapting their parenting, talking to schools and friends, starting play projects, or taking loose parts to dull local playgrounds so that their children could have some agency there. We now play in parks, on car-free roads, streets during lockdown, in front of a children's hospital, in an ancient churchyard, a doctor's empty car park, or on a city farm, or a temporarily closed bus station. If urban regeneration embraced the playing of children, families and friends would meet up, linger for hours, and spend a little money perhaps. Places where play is welcomed become destinations with happy associations. Using Playwork skills and bold advocacy, we can reweave the fabric of the city so that once again, play can be wherever children are.